Maya is turning 4 raw, untamed acres deep in the Appalachian Hills of West Virginia into the retreat she's always dreamed of building. But what if starting from zero was never the hardest part of the journey? For the past several years, she's been quietly mapping out every detail, every material, every decision, all while navigating the very real weight of being a single mother and everything that comes with it. Now that dream isn't just a vision anymore, it's breathing. One decision, one obstacle, and one step at a time. This isn't a glossy renovation series with a professional crew and an unlimited budget. It's raw problem solving in real time, figuring it out as it comes, learning what holds and what fails, and pushing forward even when the process gets messy. Every hour on this land is part of building something that goes far deeper than 4 walls and a roof. Once the concrete footers cure, Maya and her longtime friend Daniel move in to set the metal brackets, torquing down every bolt so the floor framing can finally take shape. Pressure-treated lumber is chosen for the base, so galvanized nails go in to make sure nothing works loose as years go by. It's one of those quiet decisions that won't show on camera, but it matters enormously a decade from now. Every board is positioned with the center point landing precisely where 2 pieces meet, keeping every joint clean and perfectly aligned. Meanwhile, Daniel measures and cuts more boards to length, running them along the backside of the beams to add strength and lock the structure solid from the ground up. All the excess material is trimmed away, bringing the entire frame into crisp alignment with the planned footprint. 16 by 22. The framing now sits exactly true to the layout, matching everything that was mapped out from day one. The brackets are spaced at 16-inch intervals in both directions, creating a clean, even grid to follow. A nail gun keeps the pace moving, and each bracket gets locked into the frame in quick succession. The work flows across the structure in a steady, satisfying rhythm. Position it, check it, drive it, move on. The floor joists are cut to length and dropped into the brackets one at a time. The left side gets finished first, each joist sliding home and getting secured before moving forward. Once that run is done, the right side follows the same method. Every piece is set with care, making sure nothing sits even slightly off. Pressure-treated lumber carries preservatives deep in the wood fibers that guard against moisture damage, rot, insects, and fungal decay. That protection becomes critical when parts of the structure sit inches from the ground or face open weather before the building is fully sealed. Blocking is installed between every floor joist, running across the full length of the frame. This step keeps the joists from twisting or racking over time as the wood naturally moves with seasonal moisture and temperature swings. It also prevents the floor from developing a bounce down the line, keeping everything firm and trustworthy underfoot. They crawl beneath the floor framing to install the plywood that closes off the bottom of the structure. The ground is still saturated from several days of steady rain, making the space cold, muddy, and brutally uncomfortable to work in. Despite all of it, the work doesn't stop. The plywood gets carried in, positioned, and fastened from below. Cold, damp, running on fumes, and still moving forward. The foam board insulation gets measured, scored, and pressed into position. As the structure closes in, spray foam follows behind it, sealing every gap and crack to lock out the cold and keep the warmth in where it belongs. Maya selects plywood for the subfloor and begins laying it across the joists. Unlike single-layer boards, plywood is built from multiple wood layers bonded together with alternating grain directions. That cross-layered construction gives it real resistance to warping, shrinking, and swelling when temperatures and moisture levels shift, which matters enormously inside a cabin that will face hard winters. It's a welcome day when Nathan and Marcus arrive at the site to lend extra hands as wall framing begins. The studs get laid out across the subfloor so everything can be prepped before assembly. Boards get fastened together, and what was lying flat just moments ago starts rising up into the recognizable shape of a wall. Wall framing can look deceptively simple once it starts going vertical, but it's one of the most structurally critical stages of the entire build. It defines the shape of the cabin and determines how square, straight, and true everything above it will be. If something drifts here, it doesn't stay contained. It echoes through every layer that follows. One of the biggest dangers is misalignment. Walls that aren't perfectly square create ripple effects through finishes, windows, and doors down the line. There's also the load path to consider. The wall framing carries the weight of the roof and upper structure, so every stud, header, and connection point has to be properly sized, spaced, and reinforced. The rain becomes a recurring opponent throughout the build, forcing the crew to work around weather windows wherever possible. To shield the newly completed floor, the entire surface gets wrapped in polyethylene sheeting, blocking moisture from soaking into the wood before the building is enclosed. Despite the interruptions, the framing keeps moving forward, section by section. Work shifts to framing the bathroom, which will also carry added structural responsibility underneath the loft as the upper half of the cabin develops. The bathroom is laid out at 4 feet by 7 feet on the outside dimensions. The finished interior will come in slightly smaller, but it's still designed to comfortably hold a toilet and a compact sink. Simple, practical, and exactly right for a cabin this scale. Maya and Daniel continue dropping joists into brackets, following the same rhythm established during the floor framing stage. These joists carry extra significance because the full weight of the loft will eventually rest on them, making this one of the most critical structural connections in the entire build. The bathroom door opening gets carefully positioned so the proportions feel balanced inside the smaller cabin footprint. From there, more framing builds out around the walls as the loft structure above begins taking shape piece by piece. The loft will eventually hold significant weight, which means the framing beneath it has to be engineered with no shortcuts. With this stage complete, attention is about to shift toward one of the most ambitious phases of the build: the ridge beam, gable ends, roof framing, and trusses. It's a defining milestone, because once the roof goes on and the cabin is dried in, everything fundamentally changes. OSB sheathing gets brought in to begin closing off the walls. Normally, this step follows the roof, but here the decision is made to push ahead early. As work continues in the loft area, a slight flex is noticed under load, a subtle wobble that signals the frame needs more rigidity. Installing the OSB at this stage adds the stiffness the structure needs to behave properly. Maya continues carrying a full-time career and motherhood alongside the cabin, stretching herself thin across every role. The process demands sacrifices, brutal days, and relentless follow-through, but she keeps returning to the same truth. The result will be worth everything it's costing her right now. The roof design takes serious thought because this part of West Virginia receives heavy snow accumulation every winter. The pitch needs to be steep enough to shed that load without letting it pile up, especially since the cabin won't always be occupied throughout the year. At the same time, the loft needs to feel livable and comfortable. At minimum, enough room for a queen-sized bed. For several days, the numbers get revisited repeatedly, searching for the right balance between safety, function, and livable space. Set the ridge too low and the loft feels suffocating. Push it too high and the build becomes more complex and expensive. Eventually, the final call is made. The ridge beam will sit 10 feet above the loft floor. The rafters get cut from dimensional lumber and set into metal brackets along the top of the wall framing. One by one, they're lifted into position and pinned together at the top where they meet the ridge beam. Hurricane ties will be added later to reinforce those connections before the metal roofing goes on, a critical detail in a structure that will face strong winds, heavy rain, and deep winter weather. And this stage of the build is no easy stretch. The majority of the work is happening well off the ground on improvised scaffolding that doesn't always inspire confidence. That elevation adds a constant layer of physical difficulty and real risk to every move made up there. The windows selected months earlier turn out to be discontinued when it's finally time to order them. The only available option now comes in a grid pattern style instead of the clean, clear panes originally chosen. At that point, adding another delay to the schedule feels worse than adapting. The decision is made to move forward with what exists. It's one of those moments that defines a build like this. Plans shift. Products disappear, and sometimes the only real option is to adjust and keep moving rather than stall out waiting for a perfect outcome that may never come. Hanging the front door becomes its own milestone. Getting it seated correctly requires careful leveling, patient shimming, and fine adjustments until the door sits perfectly plumb in the frame and swings exactly as it should. Once the door and windows are finally locked in, something shifts in how the cabin feels. It's no longer a frame open to the sky. It's becoming a place. Attention turns to building the soffit. Cedar tongue and groove boards are chosen not only for their appearance, but for their proven durability against outdoor exposure over time. As the first section goes up, the change is immediate and unmistakable. The warm tones and natural grain of the cedar transform the entire character of the cabin. Work continues across the cedar siding along the front and back gable ends. It's repetitive and physically demanding after hours of lifting boards overhead, measuring, and fastening. But every completed run makes a visible difference in how the cabin looks and reads from the outside. The fascia installation requires more precision, carefully measuring and bending aluminum to hug the roofline cleanly. Each piece has to be shaped to follow the exact profile of the edge to give the roof long-term protection from water, wind, and weather damage. The crew begins working the cedar siding across the exterior walls, starting with trim pieces set first around every window, door, and corner, so the main boards have a clean line to land against. Near the bottom of the structure, a few sections are deliberately left open. They'll be covered later once the front porch addition begins. Daniel has been part of this build from the very beginning, and their friendship traces back years before the first stake was ever driven. It started in a completely different chapter of Maya's life. Pregnant, living in a previous house, trying to finish a nursery while her newborn was still in the hospital. Overwhelmed and running out of time, she posted on Facebook asking for help. A mutual friend pointed her toward her stepfather, Daniel. He came to help with that project, and another followed after. Over time, a real friendship formed, and since then, Daniel has shown up for nearly every big project and major decision she's taken on. During a build like this, many of the most important steps are invisible to anyone watching. They don't photograph well and they don't look dramatic in the frame. But they matter just as much as the visible work. Every detail carries weight, and the slower steps serve a purpose. Taking the extra time now prevents far more complicated problems from surfacing later on. After the roof insulation goes in, the goal shifts to installing a beam spanning the main living area. This beam is being positioned to carry a ceiling fan that will help move warm air throughout the space once the wood stove is running through winter. Daniel mounts a breaker panel in a carefully chosen location inside the cabin, accessible when needed, but positioned to stay visually tucked away once finishes go up. Electrical boxes get set for receptacles, switches, and lighting. One goes in for the kitchen fixture, another near where the range will sit, and additional locations get planned to follow the interior layout. The wiring gets routed cleanly through drilled holes in the framing, keeping runs direct and organized. Everything is set up so the final connections at the panel will be easy to follow, label, and service once the system is fully live. At the breaker panel, grounding and neutral connections are set up with care. The neutral wire is the standard return path. When electricity travels to a light, outlet, or appliance, it needs a complete circuit to come back to the panel. The ground is a separate safety path, giving fault current a direct route into the earth if something fails, helping prevent shock and reducing fire risk. The temperature inside the cabin has been dropping and the forecast shows it getting colder next week, so the timing of adding a wood stove feels exactly right. There's a moment of hesitation about cutting through the roof for the chimney, so the wall exit route gets chosen instead. And then it happens. The first real fire burning inside the cabin. A moment that changes everything. Maya goes with pine tongue and groove for the loft interior. It comes in under cedar on cost, And the choice isn't purely about price. The warm, natural wood tone it brings into the space is exactly what the cabin needs to feel inviting and grounded from the inside out. That contrast is designed to balance the space. Lighter wood above creating an open feeling, darker floor below anchoring everything. It's a simple call in hindsight, but one that feels completely right for what the cabin is meant to be. Natural, warm, and coherent without forcing it. One characteristic of the pine tongue and groove is that a meaningful number of the boards arrive with a slight bow along their length. That means extra adjustments during installation to coax each piece into tight contact with the one beside it. It's just the nature of working with real wood. Nothing off the stack is perfect, and a lot of the final quality comes down to taking the time each board deserves. Focus finally lands on the loft floor. The stain chosen runs slightly darker than the wall planks, giving the space a visual contrast that separates the two surfaces cleanly. Once everything is staged and ready, the installation itself flows naturally. The same process repeats across the entire loft. One board measured, placed, and fastened, then the next. Slow and steady across the space. A small expansion gap is left along the perimeter of the loft floor, so the wood has room to breathe with the seasons. Skirting boards will cover those edges later, cleaning up the transitions. Once Maya and Daniel lock into a rhythm, the pace picks up fast. And in just under 3 hours, the entire loft floor is down. And for the first time, the space genuinely looks like a home. The downstairs flooring ends up coming from a different manufacturer than the loft material because the original product sells out before enough can be secured. Even so, once it's laid out across the floor, the color matches so closely it blends seamlessly with everything above. To protect the floor area under the wood stove, Maya chooses a simple tile design that sits naturally alongside the rustic character of the cabin. At first glance, flooring doesn't announce itself as one of the most physically demanding parts of a build, but once the work begins, it becomes clear how much labor it actually demands. Every board has to be measured, cut, seated, tapped tight, and verified before moving to the next. The sheer repetition becomes exhausting after hours bent over a floor. Clarissa jumps in to help at this stage, and every extra set of hands makes a real difference at this point in the build. That's when working rhythm starts to matter. Without it, even simple tasks start grinding down. But when the team clicks and everyone knows their role, progress starts rolling visibly across the room. Maya ordered a ceiling fan that matches the trim and flooring tones intentionally. It's not just about aesthetics. When winter arrives and the wood stove is running, heat accumulates near the ceiling. The fan will push that warm air back down and keep the entire cabin comfortable, rather than just the space directly in front of the stove. This entire project is being built on a carefully managed budget. The land came in at $23,900, while the cabin shell costs approximately $7,300 in total. Every material choice is made with purpose and every hour of labor is contributed by hand, with the help of people who genuinely show up. But beyond what the numbers say, something larger is happening here. This kind of build doesn't get done alone. It's about showing up on the long days when the weather fights back, when nothing goes according to plan, and finding a way to push through anyway. Some days drain everything. Some feel unclear. Some simply don't go the way they were supposed to. But board by board, pour by pour, the structure becomes something real. And so does everything it represents. It's built with the help of people who show up when it counts. Friends step in, lend a hand, and become part of the same story. And somehow, what once felt impossible turns into something that actually gets done. It's not flawless, it's not easy, but it's honest work. And slowly, what lived as nothing more than a quiet idea becomes something real. Standing there in the trees, simple, still, and full of meaning. If this build connected with you, there's more coming. Subscribe to the channel.